Hey, look out. It's Faith Talk Live. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
There they are. Robin O'Brien.
Hey.
Bill, hey.
Hey, guys. What's up?
Watching Facebook Live and on YouTube. How you guys?
Doing great. We're glad to be here.
Are you really glad to be here?
Well, actually, this is actually fun. I get excited about this. And I actually, because I'm so spiritual, I even prayed for you guys earlier.
Aww. Robin.
Ain't she the best? Ain't she the best?
Yes. And not only that, but you were also watching our previous interview with Dr. Gary Lane, not a doctor. And so we appreciate you doing that.
Actually, Dr. Gary Lane, I'm actually trying to connect him right now with a friend of ours who we're going to have on the show about narcissism, Steve Brand. They're both marriage counselors. I'm like, you guys should talk.
Yeah, no kidding.
So I'm trying to get those two connected. But we're actually been working on the Mark and Robin show lately. That's
awesome. We'll talk to you in a minute about that. But while you were praying, Mark was sharpening his knives because he's a knife collector.
I like knives.
Knives.
You never know when you might have to do some killing. Just kidding. Just kidding.
You know what? Now people will really listen to your podcast after saying that.
Just kidding. That's an old Southern joke, for people in California and other states where, your knife, the length of your blade is like, you can have a blade of 2 inches or less if it's any kind of holder. So it's like, how do you even do anything with that?
Why even have a knife if you can?
I know, right? Haven't they ever seen Crocodile Dundee movie?
That's not a knife.
That's not a knife. Okay, so let's talk about this before we went live. You guys were pumpkin carving. Was it yesterday or Saturday?
We pumpkin carved on Friday. Yeah. And we got little miniature pumpkins, so that was actually a lot less mess.
Yeah,
it was actually a fun experience. I actually did a Trump pumpkin. Sometimes when you look at art and you're like, I'm going to make something out of something, you're like, what do you see when you look deeply into this pumpkin? And I saw Trump's hair, and so I cut out a Trump hair thing, but it's not normal Trump hair. It's Trump hair when like the plane
when he's in the wind.
And it's kind of up and it's got a little swoosh. So I felt inspired to do that.
Wow. Now, Mark, what did you do?
Well, first I named Robin's pumpkin the Trumpkin.
Yeah, I like it.
So, trademark.
Trademark.
Hey, there you go. And I just carved a Scary's face on one time, kind of typical, boring pumpkin carving, stuff. But on the other side, I actually carved a little Ghostbusters sign on the back.
Awesome.
The ghost on the front, Ghostbuster on the back. Hey,
I like it. Very cool.
Did the kids get into it pretty well, or what?
They did. They took it seriously. Sometimes my children take things a little too seriously, and it kind of became a competition of who could cut the fastest. And then we actually had a Mexican. We had a pig. Someone carved a pig, but it looked to me like a Mexican wrestler. So it's a Carnitos Nacho Libre wrestling pumpkin. So
I like it. Y'all really get into your pumpkin carving. I do good just to make little triangle eyes and a mouth.
Oh, that's okay. Yeah, y'all should have a Faith Talk live pumpkin contest.
We should, and I would totally lose.
Yeah. I know someone who should enter.
So now, do you use the meat of the pumpkin to make a pie, or do you just toss it? What do you do with it?
We don't homeschool anymore. We don't have to do that.
The kids toss it at one another.
Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
But very on a limited basis. Mom put a stop to that really quick.
That's good.
They're all great kids, high achievers.
Yeah.
Above average,
So let's talk about the Mark and Robin show. Who you been having on? What kind of fun are you having on the Mark and Robin show?
Well, past week, we had a lady. Her name is Dr. Mariette Jansen, and she is she's an expert in narcissism. She wrote a Newsweek article this summer called 4 Ways to Spot If You're Dating a Narcissist. Mm-hmm. And so we had her, and she also has a book called From Victim to Victor, The Narcissism Survival Guide. And so we had her on the show, and we actually had a really great response of people who were realizing, wow, I couldn't put a name on what I was having in my relationship. And not that this episode is going to diagnose your partner or your parent, but it for some people, when they hear other people's stories, they can sort of start to connect to it. And what makes it great is because I think sometimes for people, if they're dealing with a narcissist in their life, they're denied their reality. So they're like, oh, that didn't happen to you. Like a narcissist will tell you, it's called gaslighting. They'll tell you, oh, I didn't have that conversation, or, oh, this never happened. And so you start to doubt yourself. So sometimes when you hear other people's experiences with narcissism, you're like, oh, okay, that's what that was. Because it's almost like a PTSD. Like you just kind of start to block things out. Like, oh, that really isn't my reality, but it was. So
wow.
Yeah. It was really interesting in her case. The narcissist in her life was a parent. So what happens when you're raised by a narcissist who, the world revolves around the narcissist, of course. As we all come to learn from the narcissist that the world revolves around them. What do you do when that's your parent? And two questions we asked is, what do you do when that's your parent? And is narcissism curable? Is there something you can do because narcissistic personality disorder is a personality disorder. And so some really interesting questions and answers there in that podcast.
Yeah. Well, that's all well and good, but let's talk about me, okay? Just kidding. There's my narcissist joke for the day. Okay?
Very funny. Well, when you talk about was it narcissism or a narcissist?
Right?
Is that very common? I mean, is that something? I mean, do we all have narcissists in our life? I mean, besides Dan in my life, is there anybody else?
Well, one thing we learned from another guest that we have on the show, Steve Brand, who is a great, clinical psychologist, right? And
psychotherapist. Yep.
Psychotherapist and executive coach. But Steve Brand on our podcast with Steve, he shared that 90% of narcissists are men. Dan Radcliffe.
Really?
And,
really?
10% are men and 10% are women. And the other side of that coin is we're also talking about borderline personality disorder, which is the opposite. 90% women, borderline personality disorder, and 10% men. So that was new that I'd never heard. But again, something where that information I think is going to help a lot of people understand, why is it that I'm in a relationship that continuously goes through the same pattern over and over again, and no matter what I do to fix it, we get counseling. I'm reading all the books and begging my spouse or my significant other to read the book. But why doesn't it change? And I think there's some answers there.
Right.
That's so good. Mark and Robin talking about the show, and it's not called the Mark and Robin Show. What is it called? What is it called? I can't remember.
The Mark and Robin Show.
It's called the Mark.
What a great
and
name.
Robin Show.
Can you just say that narcissists forget things? See, look at that.
Yes. No, but it's interesting. Like that particular show, we had a lot of people listen to it and give feedback on it, how it impacted them. And they were like, what is my next step? And so for some people, it's like counseling, if you can get into it. There are Facebook groups that support groups where people can share their experiences. And it's kind of like, it's very helpful for people to join these groups because they feel heard. And so often they don't feel heard and they're very confused as to what's going on. I'll give you an example. As I was speaking to a friend of mine this week, a good friend of mine, and she reminded me of the fact she says, Robin, we almost lost you. Meaning that like in your relationship with a narcissist, like you became so isolated and so closed down, like your personality completely changed. Because narcissism actually makes people lose their self-esteem over time. Like I remember when someone told me like, oh, you're in a relationship with a narcissism, over time, your self-esteem will get lower and lower. And I'm like, oh, I got tons of self-esteem. I'm fine. And then over time, it's like, oh, there she is, the little puddle on the floor. But, it's so we're hoping that this is going to help broken people, at least have some hope.
Yeah. Something really, really common with narcissism is it's called love bombing, right? And it's where the narcissist really puts on the mask of being the greatest guy you've ever met in your whole life. And all he thinks about is you. And all he thinks about is the adventures we're going to have together and all the great future we're going to have. And he keeps that mask on, until he closes the deal. And then the mask is off. And you're like, who is this person? And so love bombing. But the other, dangerous sign to look out for is, the lion always tries to separate his victim from the herd, right? If you see the person you're in a relationship, trying to separate you from the people that have loved you your whole life, the people that know you, and the people that will say, hey, this guy, this guy, you got to get rid of this guy. I don't know what's wrong with him, but something's wrong with him. And you need those people in your life. And the narcissist will try to separate you from those people, from your friends, from your family. So, if you're dating a narcissist, that's a great time to say bye.
Bye.
See you later.
Bye. Let us help you. It's very hard to walk away.
Interesting.
Now, where do you go from here? I mean, as far as, it's almost like following kids and animals. I mean, here you've had an amazing podcast episode. Will you take this and build on the next one, or will the next one you go, okay, well, let's talk about pumpkin carving? I don't. How do you build your guest list? How do you do that?
Well, actually, we're going to do a whole series on narcissism. So, we have Steve Brand coming on the show. I have another person who's part of a narcissism Facebook group with over 100,000 members who's going to be on the show. So we want to do a whole series, because when I say that word narcissism, there's a lot of people who's like, their brains just light up like, oh, I had one of those, and so there's a lot of connection. So,
would a narcissist be someone that would say, hey, I'm one of those, or not?
No.
Nope. The narcissist has no self-awareness. They really think the world revolves around them. And they really think that if you say anything contrary to their belief and contrary to worshiping them every day, telling them they're so great and their accomplishments are so out of this world, the thing that the narcissist dreads the most is rejection, right? They need everybody in their life to tell them how great they are, to worship them, basically.
Right. And if you don't, you're going to pay.
Right. Yeah. And one of the podcasts, the doctor tells the story about, a man, the woman breaks up with the man. The man comes back and worms his way back into her life. And
like years later, we're talking like 30 years later, he comes back to her.
Wow.
Yeah. Okay. And, they work things out supposedly, and everything's going great now. And he wakes up one day and goes, I'm leaving. And she says, why? And basically he said, he says, remember all those years back when you left me, you don't leave me. I leave you. Wow. And he walks out the door. The whole thing was a construct to get his revenge, because it all revolves around him. Wow. And you think, are there monsters like that in the world?
And it was a year and a half relationship he had just to.
Wow. That's crazy.
That is crazy. I think Robin is frozen there.
Robin froze. Yeah. Apparently it's cold where she is.
Okay, let me unmute Robin here. Let me find it. I haven't found that button yet.
Yes.
Robin is a professional.
There she is. Now we can see Robin.
We got to take a break, but I would just, I'm the kind of, when you talk about stuff like this, my brain starts just thinking, well, are narcissists, are there a lot of narcissists that are entertainers? Are there a lot of narcissists that are, are they in a certain sphere of people? I mean,
world leaders.
Yeah. A lot of world leaders are narcissists, because a narcissist wants everything to revolve around
them.
Right.
So, yeah.
And leaders of corporations. I've talked to people who are like high up VPs, and they're like, every single time they always had a narcissist as the president or the CFO of a company. It's very common.
How can you fire 10,000 people and not even worry about it? Because one thing a narcissist lacks is empathy. So, hey, if I have to lay off 10,000 people to make the numbers work, hey, boom, let me push the button.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's cold. It's fascinating. And not only fascinating, I think it's something that everybody needs. So, folks, listen to is it Mark and Robin or Robin and Mark show?
It's called the Mark and Robin show.
Depends on who you ask, right? Or no?
Yeah.
I actually, if you listen to it, Mark and Robin rolls off the tongue better than Robin and Mark, because it's like a, thing.
It does. And we'll do some podcast tutorials about pumpkin carving and, coronavirus. I have a tutorial about my Halloween costume, which is the coronavirus vaccine. I don't know if it'll be ready or done, but I'm really working on it. You're welcome.
It's going to be huge.
Very funny. Very funny. Let's catch up with you guys next month. And folks can follow. They can go to their favorite venue to get podcasts and listen. The new one drops when? what day this week or this month?
This Friday. Usually by this Friday, we'll have the new one dropped with Steve Brand.
This Friday.
That's the new one with the narcissism.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Sweet.
It's narcissism all month. Okay.
Oh, good. Good.
That's funny. All right, check them out. Mark and Robin show. They're amazing. Guys, we've got to take a break. We'll be right back. I'm Rick Probst.
And I'm Dan Ratcliffe.
This is Faith Talk Live.